Hey, I hope everyone's having a good day. Welcome back to the channel, and today I wanted to talk about something that I feel quite strongly about, which is game emulation, game preservation, and how that relates to game piracy and the recent closing of Sony's online stores that served the PS Vita, PSP, and the PlayStation 3. So before we get into the real sort of meat of this topic, I think it's best to just explain. I did do a video on this a little while ago if you want to go back and watch it, but the TLDR version is basically just that Sony out of the blue decided that they were going to shut down the PSN stores for, as I said, the PlayStation 3, the Vita, and the PSP. And this came out in basically what was a leak, and it was rumored for a little while, and people weren't really sure if it was true or if, what was going on with it. But it turned out, yeah, it was completely true, and it's now official that it's been closed. And the weird thing is, there was all sorts of reports about developers, basically making games still for the Vita, and then finding out the same time the public did that the store was going to be closed, and they're not close enough to finishing their product before they ship it on the system. And they're basically saying, well, we've done like 3 years of work and you're just closing the store, and we can't finish our game in time to release it. And of course this pissed off a ton of people, including not just game developers, but people like myself and a lot of other people in the industry that basically just believe Sony doesn't give a damn about game preservation. They really don't. Backwards compatibility is something they dabble in, but I don't think they care. I really don't. I think they only put it in because people make a fuss. It's just a shame they don't care about their history. But in all fairness, to play devil's advocate, not every single person who buys a PlayStation 4 or a PlayStation 5 is going to want to play PS3 games or PS1 games or whatever the case may be. But to have no preservation at all seems very, very weird to me. I know it's not in the forefront of these companies' business plans at the moment, and going backwards isn't really something that they are looking at. But when you consider what Microsoft is doing, they are bringing so many things forward and even improving them. They're making it so that they run in a higher resolution and better texture work and frames per second and all this kind of stuff. And PlayStation's just like, yeah, well, you can play this, I guess. That seems to be their attitude to it, and I really, really don't like it. And as I was just saying, not everybody cares about retro games. That's fine. They don't have to. If you don't like retro stuff, then that's fine. You don't have to, but I think it should still be there as a feature for the people that do. Now, you could argue that it would take away development time from other things, but Sony need to build it into their system. They really do need to build it in, and it's not actually as difficult. I mean, I'm not a game developer, just full disclosure, I'm not a developer, I don't know how to code, I only know basic stuff about game code. But wouldn't it make sense to try and build backwards compatibility into these systems if possible? I think it would, because think about the PlayStation 5, right? This is a really good example in my opinion. I was lucky enough to get a PlayStation 5 at launch, and it was a pain in the ass to get hold of, but again, that's a story for another time. But there really isn't much on the system right now to play. There is obviously the great things like Demon Souls, and a lot of people like the Miles Morales game. I personally wasn't that fond of that, but there's stuff to play, but not a lot of it. There really isn't. But when you consider the PS4 backwards compatibility that's in the PS5, that opens up thousands of games for you to play on that system, which it, thank God that it had, because we'd be playing nothing right now. I haven't played a PS5 game since, I'm just looking at my shelf right now. Yeah, Demon Souls. Actually, that's a lie. I played Outriders recently on the PS5, but I believe that's on the PS4 as well. So I'm not really going to count it as a PS5 game, but you get my point, which, to lay it out plainly, is simply, if the PS5 was not able to play PS4 games, we'd have close to nothing to play right now. So really, people should be counting their lucky stars that it's able to, be backwards compatible. And Sony didn't even want to do it. I guarantee you they didn't want to make it backwards compatible for a long time. There was probably people within Sony that did, but the higher-ups definitely couldn't care less about it, because, not to sound like a broken record, but the higher-ups in these companies generally don't care. There's obviously a few exceptions, but the higher-ups are just money spinners. They're just CEOs who have no interest in video games, mostly. They're interested in profit margins and making a ton of money. They're not interested in quality products, they're not interested in integrity, they're not interested in game preservation or any of that, which is exactly why this has happened. Why the stores are closing down. They're not interested in it, and it's ultimately their decision. So with all that in mind and all that said, Jim Sterling recently did a episode of the Jimquisition, which I'm a massive fan of. Jim is basically a national treasure at this point, and they made some really, really interesting points. And while they can't condone certain things, I definitely understand what they meant by what they said. So the gist of it was basically that pirating or emulating these games is morally okay. And, generally stealing is morally not okay, right? Let's all just agree that that's true. But when you really look down to the way society works, and I don't mean to get too deep here, but morality is just something created by human beings. It doesn't exist in nature. This is just something we've all collectively agreed is okay, but that doesn't mean it actually is. If society broke down and shit really hit the fan, I guarantee you morality would be out the fucking window. So it's just one of those things, right? But in all seriousness, I don't have a problem with emulation, and I don't have a problem with people having, copied games or ROMs or whatever you want to call them, right? Because as Jim has said, these companies aren't interested in selling you these games anymore. And if they're not interested in selling them to you, how can you acquire them? How can you can't go to Sony and say, I want X game, I will give you X amount of money for that game. And they just give you the one you want, because it doesn't work that way. It's not there anymore. There are a ton of download only games for the PS Vita, for example, which are just literally lost to the world now unless you downloaded it. If it's gone, you just can't purchase it. It's gone. So what's the next best thing? Emulation. Yeah. I'm not suggesting you go into a store and physically steal games off the shelf, of course. That's not what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, a lot of people that do emulation don't do it for the reasons that the game industry would want you to believe. Gone are those days of people trying to sell you shoddy copied DVDs of movies. I don't know if you've ever had this, but I was in a Burger King store a long time ago, probably 10 years ago now, and a guy came in with like a backpack full of copied movies, burned to a disc, right? And they would try and sell you them like, three discs for £10 or $20 or whatever the price would have been, right? And that is the shady side of it, when people are trying to make money off of it. But it doesn't really work like that now. I'm not saying those people don't exist, but it doesn't really work that way. Nowadays, most of the people that are archiving and keeping these copied versions of games, and even distributing them on websites for free, by the way, they're not charging for them. There's a lot of websites that just have ROMs available to download, and I really don't see any problem with that, because these people are generally massive fans of the old games and retro gaming in general. They're doing it so that people can play these things for years to come, because the companies that actually made them, well, they maybe not made them, because I guarantee you that some of them would want their games still to be played, but the companies that can sell you these things, like Sony's online store, for example, are just not interested in keeping them alive or keeping them selling. They're on to the next big thing, the next money-making thing. And another thing I should say, of course companies need to make money, because if you don't have money, you don't have the games in the first place. I understand that. I'm not saying companies can't make profits and they can't make big profits. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is profit at all cost is not worth doing. If you cannot make a quality game and sell it, like, I don't know, God of War, for example, or even, do you know what, even Outriders, barring the server issues, is a great game. I really enjoy it, and it's fine, and they're going to make a profit on it, I have no doubt. And then, after that profit, they will make expansions, just like a game should do if it does well. It shouldn't be carved up and sold to you piecemeal. It shouldn't have microtransactions to buy every little thing in it. It should just be, you buy a game, you play it, that's it. Like, no bullshit stuff in between. But we live in the bullshittiest time when it comes to video games, unfortunately. Again, I've said this before, I'm in my early 30s now. I'm from a time where video games were just, you went into a store, you picked up the case and you had a look and you thought, oh, I'll give this a try. And that game had to basically work out of the box. And I'm not talking just things like the Mega Drive, the Genesis, or Super Nintendo or things like that. I'm talking Sega Saturn and then Dreamcast and the original Xbox, GameCube, all this stuff. There was barely a game that would come out that was completely broken. It just didn't really happen. And of course, technology's moved on. Games are much more complex than they used to be. But that wasn't our choice as consumers. It was their choice as companies to keep pushing what they could do. And they've pushed it, I think, to a point now where there's literally nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do to keep these games stable. There's barely a game that releases that has some kind of online element that works first time, you know, it just doesn't happen. But back to the original point that I was trying to make is just that I think pirating, and I mean, I don't even want to call it pirating, because when you're pirating a game, that is what I said earlier, you know, when you're trying to copy it and sell it. Emulation is something that most people do because they love games. And I think that's the bottom line. I don't think you should feel bad about it. I think it should be encouraged, in fact. And I believe something else that Jim's mentioned before was that there's this argument that, oh, you know, every downloaded copy of our game is, you know, like emulated copy, I mean, is a lost sale and all this kind of thing. That's just utter nonsense. It's not, because people that were going to emulate it were never going to purchase it in the first place. That's kind of a logical conclusion. Some people like to play it before they decide if they want to buy it. I've seen that before. I've done it myself, actually. I actually collect a lot of games for the original Xbox, and I have a modded original Crystal Xbox, and it's got a 200 gig hard drive in it where I can load all the ROMs of the games onto the hard drive and play them from it, so I don't have to get wear and tear on my discs. Do you see what I mean? Like, I'm doing that because I love the system, not because I want to make money off of it. Like, I literally buy all of the discs. I have them. I have some of the really rare stuff, like Jet Set Radio Future, you know, the standalone version. I have Otogi, I have the first Harry Potter game that's really reaching up there in price right now. You know, I have some stuff for it that I just want to keep in good condition and archive. But if I want to play them, you can bet your ass I'm not going to be taking them out of their protectors and putting them into the console every time I want to do it. So all in all, I think the point is that emulation is not the thing, not the negative thing, I should say, that people used to think it was. It's not that shady, you know, 3 movies for a tenner type thing anymore. Emulation is about preservation, and even if it's not about preservation for a certain individual, it doesn't matter, because that person was never going to put down the money to buy the game anyway. But there you go, that's what I think about it. I'll actually link Jim's video in the description, because again, they are just honestly a national treasure at this point, and I love everything that they do. And if I can send more people their way, then great. Not that they need me to, of course, but you know, it's nice. It's a nice thing to do. But I'd really like to know what you think about it in the comments below. If you are a games collector, let me know what you collect. And do you use emulators to play the games when you're not using your real collection, or do you like to use the real collection anyway? What do you think about Sony closing the stores down? Anything you want to talk to me about, the comment section is open down below. And as I've said in a few videos, I'm really looking to get my subscriber count up, trying to do the best I can. I'm trying to improve all the time. I'm trying to get content out as good a time as I can. So if you are still with me at this point in the video and you think I've deserved it, then please do consider subscribing to the channel. It would really mean a lot to me, and I'd really appreciate it. But with all that said, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.